Hi, everybody. We'll begin in just a couple minutes here. Make sure that we get everybody in and on to start at 12:30. So bear with us. Thanks. Okay, looks good enough. Let's get started today. Hi, welcome to our Sonoma County June virtual farmers market. Thank you for coming today. My name is Pat, and I am today's moderator, and am a graduate of the 2005 Master Gardener class. We're happy you could join us today. We also have a special guest speaker today talking about a topic that I know will be of interest to all given our drought conditions. In fact, drought is keeping me awake. So anyway, we will also be answering the questions that you've either submitted or submit today. So next chart. First, today's ground rules. We ask that you mute your audio and turn off your video. If you want a question, please use the chat box to type in any question you may have. Please remain muted. We may ask you to unmute for a clarification if we need some clarification on one of your questions. Otherwise, please stay muted. Today's session will also be recorded. So if this is a concern, you might want to leave the session today and watch the recording later on YouTube under Sonoma County Master Gardeners. The organization, the Sonoma County Master Gardener organization, has been serving home gardeners here in Sonoma County for almost 40 years. We are an organization of volunteers who have been trained by the University of California, Davis, and we try to use the most current research-based information out of the university to help all home gardeners find answers to their many diverse gardening questions. And we've had them all, I think. Well, maybe not all. We'll find out today. Next. Just to let you know, this week, the 21st to the 27th, is Pollinator Week. And this is an annual event. It's celebrated internationally in support of pollinator health. And it's a time to celebrate pollinators and spread the word about what we can do to protect them. So look out for your pollinators this week. Next. Okay. I want to let you know we're attaching a link in the chat box to a PDF with a list of resources related to today's session. So you can look there, and for those with iPads, the link can be clicked on and the PDF can be downloaded. When today's video is posted on YouTube, you can also find the link in the comment section of that video. For any real-time questions today, we will post links into the chat area real-time. Okay. All right, now to the fun part. Today we have Stephanie, who is our guest presenter, and we'll talk about food gardening during the drought. I know this is an extremely timely topic and of interest to us all as we struggle to reduce our water use. After her presentation, we will then get to the rest of your questions, and actually a lot of them that have been pre-submitted are related to the drought, so very timely. Let me begin by introducing Stephanie. Stephanie came to Sonoma County 13 years ago. She is a graduate of the Sonoma County Master Gardener class of 2010 and promptly joined the Food Gardening Specialist Group. She grew our Facebook page for over 7 years, was the website Food Gardening Editor and Food Gardening Publication Manager, and served a year as the Food Gardening Specialist Project Leader. Stephanie was one of 3 Food Gardening Specialist members who developed food gardening with less water materials during our last severe drought in 2014. In 2018, Sonoma County recognized her as Volunteer of the Year. She has been very involved in the monthly food gardening specialist veggie happening Zoom events for the past year. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Stephanie, and I'll turn the presentation over to you. Thanks.
Great, thanks so much. Welcome everyone. I'm really glad to see everyone here. We are going to be talking about a very timely subject. It concerns, excuse me, I'm trying to get my slides up. There we go. So we are going to talk about this timely subject. No one is going to be surprised if I tell you we're in a very severe drought. Today we are having not a very in-depth discussion, but one that I know you can go away with, some water-wise strategies that you can apply to your food garden this week. Today we're going to look at how to access more information about food gardening with less water. We're going to talk a little bit about an approach to determining what your water budget is relative to, do you have enough water to food garden? We're going to watch a short video that was made during the last drought that still has wonderful information to help us. And then we're going to come back together and talk about 11 water saving strategies in our food garden. So in 2014, there were 3 food garden specialists that got together with UC oversight and to develop printed information to help our food gardeners garden with less water. And I think CA would agree with me, one of our group of 3, that Electra did all the heavy lifting. She did all the technical work. If there was math involved, it was hers. So big shout out to Electra for this material. There's 2 ways to access it. One is to capture the QR code on the bottom right corner with your smartphone. If you don't have your smartphone, don't panic. We're going to put this up again at the end of the presentation. Or you can Google Sonoma County Master Gardener and you'll come up with our website. It'll look something like this. This is a screenshot. You can see our tab, our yellow tabs. If you hover your cursor over the food gardening tab, you will get a drop-down menu. You won't get this hot pink arrow, but it's there to show you where food gardening with less water is in this menu. And that will, if you click on that, that will take you to this page. You see the introductory paragraph to food gardening with less water. Because this is a screenshot, I can't scroll down, but there's a variety of links. And I do want to mention that a brief overview of food gardening with less water document is there that covers the material we're going to cover today, as well as a link to the video we're going to watch. So don't worry about taking notes, just listen and absorb what you can, and you have a place to go back and find more information, including any deep dive that you want to take into this subject. All right, so I'm going to suggest to you that we can food garden in a drought. I want you to consider that tasty tomato from your backyard and compare it to that tasteless tomato on your grocery shelf. You can grow that tasty tomato with a lot less water than it took to grow that tomato in your grocery store. So how are we going to do that? We have to make a plan and we have to make some decisions. And our approach is going to be a lot like planning our vacation. When we plan our vacation, we look at our income, we look at our household expenses, and at the end of the day, we hope we have some discretionary income that we might be able to spend on our vacation. If we might be very disappointed in the amount of water, or excuse me, the amount of money that is available for our vacation. In that case, we have to make some decisions. We might decide to scale back our vacation to fit the amount of money that we have. Or we might take a look at our household expenses and see where we can economize, hopefully to have more discretionary income that we can throw to our vacation. So back to our water budget. So what do we need to know? One of the things we need to know is how much water did we use last year in the hot, dry period of our county? You know that we only have 2 seasons here, hot and dry and cool and hopefully rainy. So we need to look at last year's usage. And if you're on city water, that's very easy. Most city water bills include the last 12 months of usage. If it's not on your water bill, you can go to your water authority and look at your account to find out what your usage is. If you're on well water, If you didn't apply a flow meter to your well, then you do not know exactly how much water you used. I would hazard to guess that people who own wells are acutely aware of how much water is in that well and have a good idea of how far that might go relative to their household and their landscape needs. All right, next we need to know what our city and county restrictions are. Currently, some of us have mandatory restrictions and most of us have voluntary restrictions. For planning purposes, we should consider our voluntary restrictions as mandatory. I have no inside information, but this is a plan and we don't want to grow a food garden if we can't bring it to harvest because we don't have enough water. Next, we need to see where can we make savings so that we will have enough water to keep our essential landscape plants like our trees and major shrubs alive, and hopefully have enough for a food garden. So the place to look is at our water use habits. And I would suggest that you take a look at the Sonoma Marin Water Saving Water Partnership website. Their logo is to the right. Below that is a address to their water savings calculator. So there's lots of good information on there. But at this point, I would refer you to the savings calculator. It will tell you if you take this one action, you will save this many gallons of water. So it helps you plan how many household habits you need to change in order to have enough water to food garden. And we're not going to share it. It's too big of a list of things that you can do. There's a lot of things that don't cost any money. It's a matter of changing habits. There are some big items that do require a little bit of investment. But let's talk about some of those small items. So I looked at a site where they were looking at an average family of 4 and that the average shower time was 8 minutes. So they said if this family showered for 5 minutes instead of 8 minutes, they would save 2,700 gallons of water a year. If they used a hose to clean their walkway and they stopped doing that and used a broom, they would save over 3,000 gallons a year. If they installed a water saving shower head, they would save another 2,700 gallons a year. And if they turned off the faucet when they brush their teeth and they shave, so use a little water at the bottom of the basin to shave and only turn on the faucet when you need to wet your toothbrush, you would save an additional 2,200 gallons a year. So let's think about that in relationship to what a food garden requires. A 4x8 food bed requires, in the typical hot summer week of Sonoma County, requires 20 gallons of water a week. So if we maintain a summer garden for 5 months, we need to find 400 gallons of available water. And just looking at those 4 items, and there's a myriad of other things you can do, it's very possible to have enough water to food garden if you change your household habits. And we need to change those habits, one, to meet our county restrictions, and then to keep our essential landscape, our tree and our major shrubs alive, and have enough water to food garden. So once we determine that we have enough water to food garden, this is not the time to experiment or to overplant. We need to be respectful of this limited resource. So we're going to plant only what our family likes to eat and what they can consume. All right, once we do that, then we need to employ water rise strategies in our food garden. So we're going to, in a short while, Cleo's going to share her screen to show us a movie. And the movie is made it's a video, it's a 7-minute video. We made it in 2014. But all of the recommendations are completely applicable to our drought situation today. It highlights 4 major water saving activities in your food garden. These are the activities you'll get the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak. We understand that some of you in Sonoma County are not allowed to use a drip system. And one of the major suggestions is to use drip to deliver water to your food garden. So you need to pay attention to your county or city restrictions, to your locality restrictions. And so whether you're using a bucket or you're using drip irrigation, this information in this film will help you decide how much water you need to deliver and how you do that and what format do you deliver that water. So it's still useful information whether you're using a bucket or you're using drip. All of the people in the film are food garden specialists. They wrote the script with oversight from UC, and the Sonoma County gave us a grant to make the film, so it was professionally filmed. So I'll see you on the other side of the film. We'll talk more.
Sonoma County master gardeners love to grow their own vegetables.
But with California facing water restrictions, it's important to be water wise.
This video will demonstrate some simple things that you can do to successfully grow vegetables with less water. With most gardeners in Sonoma County facing water restrictions, some gardeners might feel they can no longer grow vegetables for their family. The water saved by letting a lawn go brown can be enough to grow your own edibles. During the hot months in Sonoma County, vegetable gardens need an average of 1 inch of water per week. In a 4x8 summer vegetable garden, this is about 20 gallons per week.
During cool months, a veggie garden may require half of this amount of water. The actual amount of water your individual bed requires will depend on a number of factors, such as weather, soil type, or your own individual microclimate. You can take 4 basic steps to maximize the water efficiency of your vegetable garden. Compost, drip irrigation, right plant, right place, and mulch.
Adding compost is the single best thing you can do for your soil. Compost improves the soil's water holding capacity, adds nutrients, and helps produce better yields. If this is the first time a bed is being used for growing vegetables, dig 3 to 4 inches of compost into the top 3 to 8 inches of the soil, which is the active root zone of most vegetables. In an established garden, you can spread at least 1/2 to 2 inches of compost on top of the soil so that you don't disrupt the soil structure and beneficial organisms that help maintain healthy, productive soil.
The next step is to set up your drip irrigation system. Drip irrigation is far more efficient than spray irrigation or hand watering. With drip irrigation, water is applied uniformly and only where it is needed, and it reduces water loss from evaporation. If you aren't using a drip system yet, it is very easy to install. For a 4x8 foot bed, the system looks like this. The simplest system is a 1/2 inch main line across the 4 foot width of the bed with the 1/4 inch tubing that has inline emitters running down the 8 foot length of the bed. In the past, gardeners were encouraged to water deeply. Now, food gardeners are advised to water only their crop's active root zone to most efficiently use limited water. We recommend watering your vegetable beds a little bit every day. Keep your soil consistently moist within the rooting zone of the plants, which in most cases is about 3 to 8 inches deep. If you water longer than that, it is likely that water is being wasted below the rooting zone. Based on your soil and microclimate, watering between 5 to 15 minutes each day is sufficient, even in the hot days of summer. Test your soil before you water. Feel how deep the soil is moist. Your best indicator is free. Once you get a feel for how much water your plants need, use a timer so that no water goes to waste. Regular observation of your garden is key to minimizing your water use while maximizing your production.
Now that the drip system is in place, it's time to think about choosing the right plant and planting it in the right place. Consider the amount of water you have available to support crops through harvest, and grow the type of vegetables that your family will eat. Look for varieties with short days to harvest. A tomato that is ready to harvest in 65 days uses less water than a tomato that is ready to harvest in 85 days. You can plant intensively, as we have here, to shade the soil and reduce evaporation. Keep in mind where you place your plants in the bed. Here's an example of how we laid out this 4x8 bed, noting where the sun comes up. Make sure your plants are close to an irrigation emitter. Knowing how big your plants will grow is also helpful when laying out your bed. The tomatoes and the squash will take up the most room in the bed. We planned the rest of the bed around them. To save space, we planted pole beans that climb up instead of out. We purposely put the lettuces in the shade of the chard and the tomatoes because in the summer they prefer to have a bit of afternoon shade. We chose varieties of vegetables and herbs for early production, and we added flowers to attract beneficial insects.
Once the right vegetables are planted in the right place, you are ready to mulch. Mulch is any protective covering for your garden beds. It moderates soil temperature and reduces evaporation. Use organic materials such as dried leaves, straw, grass clippings, or compost. Add 2 to 4 inches of mulch on top of your soil. Mulch goes on top of the drip system so that soil, not your mulch, is irrigated. You can have a bountiful vegetable garden using less water by remembering these important, simple steps.
Compost helps your soil hold water and supports all the living organisms working in the soil.
Drip irrigation puts water where you want it. Use less water, more efficiently, and it goes only where it's needed, the active root zone.
Be selective. Grow what you enjoy eating. Pick the right plants given our summer dry climate and plant them in the right place so they will thrive.
And don't forget the finishing touch. Mulch covers your soil, keeps it cooler, minimizes evaporation, and prevents weeds.
We hope these simple tips will help you have a thriving vegetable garden even during the drought.
Enjoy your harvest.
Okay, let's get back to our slideshow. All right. I think I need to share a screen again. Excuse me while I do this. All right, so now we're going to talk about 11 water-wise strategies. Some of them were discussed in the video, so we're not going to deal with them with any kind of depth. But I think you did get that as food garden specialists and all master gardeners are wild about compost and mulch. They're two of the best things you can do for your garden, whether you're an ornamental gardener or you're a food gardener. So our mantra in master gardeners is compost, 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 mulch, mulch, mulch. Before we leave this, let's talk a little bit about mulch. I do want to emphasize that you can save as much as 50% of the water loss by using mulch. Also, in the film, you probably noticed they were using rice straw and they recommended dried leaves and other things that typically are not fire-wise. So if your food garden is near your house, especially in the 5-foot perimeter, you don't want to use those materials as mulch. What we suggest is that you use compost as mulch. So you would use compost as a soil amendment. And if you could use drip irrigation, you would lay the drip on top of that. And then on top of the drip, you would add another 1 to 2 inches of compost. So you're using not rough compost, but finished compost that would not be flammable. Again, we talked about using a drip system as the most efficient way to deliver water to your crops. We do want you to comply with your local restrictions. So if you can only use a bucket, you can use the same strategy for delivering it through drip with your bucket. The whole idea is to take the weekly amount of water we need to return to the soil and divide it into portions so that we're watering the active root zone of our food plants. So ideally, we would divide that portion, or excuse me, that weekly amount in 7 portions, and we would water once a day for a few minutes. If we can only water 3 days a week, we'll divide that portion by 3 and deliver it 3 times a week, whether we're using a drip system or we're using a bucket. So do the best you can within your local restrictions. This is a picture of one of my garden beds in my community garden. It's a very generous plot, so I have more than one bed. You'll notice the 1/2-inch supply line across the bottom behind the rocks with a configuration bringing the water up into the bed. You'll notice there's a lever on the right side. That is an on-off lever, so that when this particular bed is fallow, if I'm not watering all of it, I can turn the water off. And I've since added on-off levers to each of the 1/4-inch drip lines. This bed is 3 by 6, so I do have 3 1/4-inch drip lines running through there. So I can turn one off and not waste any water if there are no plants there. So we want to be selective. Michael talked about only growing what our family likes to eat and the amount that they can consume. But also I want you to consider the individual crop water needs. If you are a food gardener, you know that once the tomato plant becomes populated with fruit, you can hold back water or stop water it altogether, allow all the fruit to ripen, and then not water after that. That's a very water-wise strategy. Don't try that with everything. There are certain times during your food, the life of your plants that they require regular water. Many of our summer plants flower and they set fruit. During that period, it's not a time to give them less water less often than you are able. So each individual crop has a specific need. Too many to discuss in our short time together. I would recommend you go to Harvest to Table. It's a local website and it has a wonderful article on it about individual crop water needs. And you can read about each individual crop and its special watering periods where it's important to give regular water. Grow high yield crops. And so we're talking about tomatoes and eggplants and squash and chard and beans and those sorts of things. In your own microclimate, if you've food gardened for a while, you will know what plants are not high yield. For example, if I don't plant bell peppers anymore. If I put a bell pepper in the ground after the last average frost in mid-April, I have to water that plant for 4 months before I have my first harvest. So I don't plant bell peppers any longer. I buy them from my local farmer. Also, there are varieties that have been bred to produce fruit in drier conditions. And so to find these varieties, you would go to a seed catalog or to a seed company website. And we have a list of all these vegetable companies in a document on our website if you want to look at all of them. But what you're looking for is terminology: drought resistant, drought tolerant, widely adapted. Widely adapted means that when the variety was being developed, it was tested under a wide variety of conditions and it performed well under all of them, including dry conditions. Do not be fooled by heat tolerant. Heat tolerant refers to air temperature, not water needs. All right, and Michael also talked about days to maturity. I want to make sure everyone understands this terminology. Days to maturity is the day that the seed or the plant hits your garden soil to the date you have your first harvest. The whole idea here is to look for shorter days to maturity so that you get a better return on your water investment. So you'll be getting produce sooner. You'll find this information on a seed packet. Many labels on plants have this, but if it doesn't, you can always Google it. Michael also talked about planting intensively, but I want to give one caution. You'll see a picture of my tomatoes with beets and scallions. And scallions are shading the soil, so they're kind of acting like a green mulch in this case. But never try this if you have poor soil or you have shallow soil, because then your intensively planted crops will be competing with each other for water and nutrients, and no one in that bed is going to be happy. So you need to have deep friable soil so that your crop can put its roots down as much as it's able to seek additional moisture. And you need to have enough organic matter in your soil so that there's enough nutrition for all of your plants. Michael talked about, I don't think they talked about eliminating weeds. Maybe they said mulch will help keep your weeds down, but you always want to remove weeds from inside your bed and outside your bed. Inside your bed, these plants are much more efficient than our cultivated plants, and they will win with water and nutrients every time. So they'll be taking those away from our crops. But weeds are also notorious for harboring pests that are pests of our food crops. So there are going to be times this summer where we're going to have extremely hot weather. So even with water-wise strategies, there's going to be periods where our crops are going to be a little drought stressed. And it's at this point where those insects can do their most damage to our plants. So eliminate the weeds also around your beds as well. Some people use a lightweight cover, row cover, over their plants. The idea is that water is evaporating from the surface and you're catching it in under that row cover as dew. And so then the dew falls back on the ground, and so you're recycling that water to some degree. You'll never recover 100% of the water that's lost. Excuse me, I went too far. All right. They talked about using shade and windbreaks, the same strategies. There's a lot of strategies for both that are shared by both. Michael mentioned using the shade of a tall plant to shade a heat-sensitive plant, but also you have patio furniture you can move. I'm sure you have some umbrellas, whether it's a beach umbrella, a patio umbrella, or even a rain umbrella. I know you're not using your rain umbrellas right now. You can strap them to the back of a chair, a patio chair, to provide some shade during the hottest part of the afternoon. If you have a box, one of my friends uses a cardboard box that she cuts holes in the sides for air circulation, and in a very hot afternoon, we'll use that to provide some shade. So windbreaks are also important if you live close to the coast or you're in another windy area, maybe at the bottom of a hill where the wind picks up. We lose water from the surface of the soil, and we also lose water through plant transpiration. So we as humans breathe, plants transpire. So when they transpire, they're releasing water vapor into the atmosphere. And when the wind brushes across the surface of the leaves, it's further drying it out. So what we want to do is create windbreaks so that we are helping our roots deliver the amount of moisture that our plant's leaves require. And never, ever turn on your drip irrigation or water with a bucket if you haven't first tested the soil moisture. Here's a picture of lovely Sue from the film, from our video, showing her index finger. You always have this handy tool with you. If you don't like putting your finger in the soil, then put a wooden dowel or some wooden chopsticks in your garden bag and use them, put them down about 6 inches deep. When you pull your finger or dowel out, if it has some moist soil clinging to it, there's enough moisture in the soil for your plants. Come back tomorrow and test the soil again. If it's dry, then it's time to irrigate. And so we hope this presentation showed you that with careful planning and decision-making, and then employing these water-wise strategies, we can grow our own food in a drought. As promised, here is the QR code again to our Food Gardening with Less Water page. Again, there's basic information we covered today, as well as some deep dive information to help you out. Also, we highly recommend the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership website. Lots of information in addition to the calculator that we mentioned. including links to every locality's current drought restrictions, as well as that locality's incentives and rebates. So know that some of the things that cost some money, you may get some money back. So look at that before you make any plans or spend any money. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thanks so much, Stephanie. Actually, excellent tips there, which we can all get outside now and put into use, not only for this year, but I think for many years to come, looking at, where California is going to be. So once again, thanks again for the presentation. I'm looking now that we're going to go ahead and address some of the questions that were submitted at registration and through the chat feature. So if you have any questions that are on your mind right now, please enter them in the chat and we will get to them. In addition to our speaker, Stephanie, I also asked Patty and Penny, our virtual farmers market panelists, to help answer them. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Patty and Penny here. Patty learned her love of gardening growing up in Santa Rosa on her Italian grandmother's farm. She has had a lifelong love for nature, planting trees, vegetables, and flowers. Upon retiring from teaching, Patty completed the Master Gardener course in 2018, learning the science behind sustainable gardening, and enjoys spreading the word to the community. When not gardening, Patty loves to hike, read, and travel. Don't we all? Penny graduated in the Master Gardener class of 2014 and is the content editor for the Master Gardener website. She writes 2 weekly Facebook posts titled On Penny's Garden and Time to Read. Before COVID, and hopefully if we get past COVID, she frequently is at the Occidental Farmers Market, Master Gardener desk. Outside of Master Gardeners, she is actively involved in fire safety and reduction efforts in Occidental and West County. Okay, on to the questions. I'm going to start with kind of the pre-submitted questions that we have, and I'm going to try to group them a little bit because, like I said, we've got several questions on drought and that. So I had questions from Cheryl, Mary, and Judy. And their question was, the best way to plant a food garden in drought, which I think, we've covered a lot of that between, Stephanie, Patty, Penny. I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to add.
It was a really good presentation, I think, for the most part. For me, the compost situation, the mulch and the compost, I feel like saves the most water.
Yes,
Okay.
I would agree.
On Mary's question, she also had the additional thing besides growing this drought about severe windstorms. And I noticed that in the video mentioned windbreaks. I don't know how severe she's talking about, but if you have something you'd like to comment on with that.
I get a lot of wind, but there's nothing much I can do about it. So, it is, and basically the best thing you can do is to plant your hardier plants to form a windbreak to your other plants.
Or plant by a fence sometimes.
If you can.
If you can. I mean, it's the last few, we've had some incredible wind the last few weeks. So it dries the ground out and the plants out. It is, it's not fun. You can put up, if you want to spend the money, a windbreak, with that green cloth, but it's a project. We did put that up on one edge of our garden where the tomatoes and stuff are, and it helps a little, but I guess in the future we could maybe grow a hedge and put the garden inside the hedge or something like that, but
Right, they regularly in Europe they use hedgerows, and in part is in addition to attracting beneficials, it's also providing a windbreak to their agricultural fields.
Exactly.
You can use a hedgerow to, if you put in plants that attract beneficials, then your hedgerow is an asset to your garden.
Correct. And you might have a situation like mine where you do your food garden. My home garden is open to all kinds of critters. So I have a community garden and we're restricted on the amount of furniture and other things that we can erect. So you just do the best job you can. Again, using some sturdy plants, maybe on the direction from which the wind normally comes, like at the direction of my wind, I do have an asparagus bed. So there are some tall ferns that are really woody almost, that are sturdy, that are protecting some of the beds downwind from it. So just plan accordingly, know where your wind comes from in addition to where your sun is.
I have one other thought. I use trellises a lot in my beds. I have them along the side of one edge of every bed. And my tomatoes grow up there, my cucumbers grow up there, my squash grows up there. Everything that can possibly climb is tied to a trellis. And I find the wind doesn't affect them much at all then.
And it does help protect the stuff that's below it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Catherine, and conserving water, can you recommend how many times a week and for how many minutes we should drip irrigate a 4 by 6 foot raised garden bed? I know it depends on the vegetable, but an average would be good to know as a baseline.
So in my beds, I would have to, now remember I have 3 lines. I have it's a 3 by 6. There's 21 emitters. Each emitter delivers a half gallon of water an hour. And I find that in the hottest part of the summer, I would have to irrigate for 17 minutes a day. I don't know if that's helpful to you. For a lot of people, 5 to 15 minutes is fine. You have to adjust it for our cooler weeks like we're having right now and do less drip irrigation or less hand watering. So on our Food Garden with Less Water website, I told you that Electra developed a lot of material that's a real, what I'll call deep dive, but there is a worksheet on there. And she's done all the math and conversion information for you. All you plug in there is your length and width of your garden, how many emitters you have, how many gallons an hour your emitters deliver. In most food gardens, people are using half gallon an hour, but some people might have a gallon an hour single emitter. And based on that, you will end up with a result that tells you how many minutes a day you need to water in order to provide 1 inch of water a week. And that water is, that 1 inch of water is our typical evapotranspiration loss in a hot week in Sonoma County. Then use your judgment, or you can go to some websites. There's a California website, CMIS, that talks about the actual ET level that it's expected in any particular day if you want to be that technical. But I think if you go through that worksheet, figure out what's appropriate for that usual hot summer week, and then divide it into as many days as you can, portion it to deliver water to your plants, then you'll be able to use your judgment based on, is it a little warmer, is it a little less warm, to adjust that watering time.
Thank you. I also wanted to acknowledge Ellie, I guess, in the chat regarding the last question with wind, had put that you can turn card tables on their side to help block. So I thought that was pretty clever. So anyway, okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Now I have another group of questions, which I think, I myself have been working with. And it's dealing with gray water. We have Lori, Shirley, and Susan. And we're talking kind of about different kinds of gray water. Lori, for instance, wants to know about dirty dishwater, using it in the garden. And for instance, they have one container with Dawn dish soap and another container with 2 teaspoons of bleach per gallon to rinse the dishes. And so, what do we do?
I would suggest that your dishwater may contain contaminants, especially meat products, especially raw meat products, that you would not want in your food garden. You might be able to use it in your landscape. If it was me and I had no other available clean water, I probably would use that water in the landscape. I might keep it in a bucket. And then if I have clean water that I'm using from my shower to warm it up, I might throw that in it to dilute the solution, and then perhaps use it on my plants. The bleach water, if you're using bleach in your rinse, I would suggest you not use it. Bleach, even if you leave it out so that the bleach dissipates, what you end up with is a lot saltier solution than regular clean water. And salt will build up in the soil. It may not be a problem in a rainy area, but here, we don't have much irrigation. So what's happening is salt is building up in the soil. And some of our plants are more salt sensitive than others. And I'm talking about landscape here. I think I would try not to use that in my food garden. Do you want to talk about, you mentioned gray water, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, this is, people were talking about, water, from washing dishes and that. They also asked what laundry detergents are the best for gray water usage.
Okay, so when I think of gray water has a broad terminology, but a lot of localities, when they're talking about gray water, they're talking about taking wastewater from your laundry out to your garden for landscape. So realize that this water is not treated water, and there could be some contaminants in it, a little bit of fecal contaminants and other things. So again, you would never use it in your, I would not use it in my food garden, but it's recommended by the University of California that you not use it for root crops or any crops where the edible part might come in contact with this water. You have a splash situation if you're using a bucket, for example. Some drip will kind of shoot up. So I would not use the gray water in my food garden. I would use it to water a fruit tree or any of my other plants. As far as safe materials are concerned, there is a reference in the PDF that is available for this session called Use of Gray Water and Recycled Water for Irrigation from the University of California. They have a number of links about safe products. So we don't endorse a particular product, but there is a discussion of safe products and how they were evaluated in that document. So you can learn more there. Did that answer the question?
I think so. Let's see. Moving on here. That's good. And I will mention that, a lot of times they're talking about trying as much as possible using the biodegradable, soaps, because I've Googled and like I said, I have Amazon sitting at my door daily now. I've got Castile soaps and everything else. But anyway, so
right. And there's a difference between soap and detergent. So detergent has synthetic ingredients in it. So soap is a more natural process. And so if you are going to use any soapy water out in your garden, I would suggest you make sure that you're using a soap and not a detergent. Again, looking at this UC document, it will give you a lot of information and a lot of links so that you can make these decisions.
Yeah. And I do know that a lot of the biodegradable soaps are the ones that a lot of people use for camping because they break down so well. Just as a mention, there wasn't a question, but I think it's good to establish that there is a difference. Again, because I know here in town in Hillsburg, we're talking about the recycled water, that, you know, we're able to get, which is different from gray water. Um,
Right.
so,
So really the big difference is gray water is not treated. Recycled water is treated 3 times, including with a disinfectant. So what you want to do is if your community provides recycled water to you, you should read the literature and follow the advice in your community's information about that recycled water. Again, UC, if you look at the UC documents, they always err on the side of food safety. So again, if you can avoid using that water in your food garden, that would be great.
okay. Any more comments on this particular thing between our panelists then? Okay, we're gonna deviate here and talk about zucchini. Hey, this is from Lauren. She wanted to know why did some of, well, she's got a few questions. So first one is, why did some of zucchini flowers before fruit form die?
I'll take that one. I've
Okay.
been picking more zucchini than we can eat already. Number one, there are 2 kinds of zucchini, of squash flowers, and you need to be aware of that. And some people are not. There's a male flower and a female flower. The male flower is just a straight stem up to the flower. And they're the kind that are generally picked for eating, but not always. I don't pick them for eating because if you take away all of the pollen, you can't pollinate the female flowers. The female flowers, you can actually see the vestigial little squash on the stem. And that is where that's your zucchini growing, assuming that it's fertilized. Now, there's one other possibility, that some flowers are not perfectly fertilized. So sometimes the zucchini will grow a little bit and then it'll wither and die. And that means that it was not properly pollinated. So those are the things that can happen to zucchini flowers or squash flowers in general.
Excellently said, Penny.
Yeah.
I have a lot of observation under that one.
Or you could just get Penny to bring in all of her extra zook, and then we don't even have to bother, and we'll save water. Okay. Related to that, which I think was kind of answered, you know, in the video and in Stephanie's talk, she was asking if she should put mulch around it. She has it in a half barrel. And I think probably the answer is yes.
The answer is definitely.
But I could be wrong, but I think so.
No, definitely.
Okay, great.
Can I say one thing about the mulch?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So you never want your mulch touching the stem of your plant.
Yes.
Keep it a couple inches away because the mulch can get wet. And if it's up against the stem, then it can create a disease situation. So you do want to keep the mulch a couple inches away from the base of your plant.
And ideally not touching the leaves also, isn't that right?
Right.
It's a little difficult for some plants that have a lot of vegetable plants that have leaves close to the ground.
I'm a big limber up. My tomatoes are limbed up so they're not touching the ground.
Yeah, mine too, but
Yeah,
the squash
it's a good
leaves do.
idea.
Yes.
It helps with diseases too, to keep those leaves off the ground if possible.
Okay, I actually just saw a question come in the chat, and since we're on talking about mulch, they were looking for the best kind of mulch if you hand water.
So when you hand water, it's more difficult because you're wetting the mulch and not the soil. You know, it's not the most efficient way to water. And in Master Gardeners, they will tell you to pull back the mulch and water your plants. That might not be convenient, but that is the best way to deliver the water to the plant. And you're not delivering the water right at the base, but a little ways out. That's where you're going to find the feeder roots.
Okay, or water in that couple inches that you pulled it away from the stem, I guess. I don't know.
Right. I mean, you can make a small, you don't have to water this whole circumference of the plant, but you know, pull it away just a little spot.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Now I have a question from Deborah. What can I do to grow larger and tastier strawberries?
Oh dear, water and fertilizer. But the water is key. And that's the problem.
Yeah, we may, growing berries this season may not be the best strategy for a drought.
Or Deborah can look at a new location out of Sonoma
Right.
County, I think. Anyway, okay, thank you. I love this question from David. How to motivate friends and family to garden?
Give them good food and say, you can grow your own.
I'm looking
Start
for
them when
some
they're
tips.
young.
So I always propagate way too many plants. I always worry that they won't come up, and then every single darn one comes up. And so some of my neighbors do food garden with my plants. They don't take the initiative to buy plants or grow plants from seed, but they're always happy to receive my extras. So it works. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Great.
Right. Well, plus it's good for the environment. You're not trucking. There's all kinds of benefits besides the fact that it tastes great.
Yeah.
So, and if you find something that really works, let me know so I can hit my husband with it.
But take every grandchild you have and teach it to garden.
Garden.
Start young. They love it. Kids love to garden.
Yep, they do. Garlic's fabulous because they can't really get it wrong. Have them plant garlic.
Uh-oh, I think I've had mine bowled a few times, but anyway, we won't go into that. Yeah, I'm a master gardener. No. The next question, Annie, she's interested in joining the Master Gardener program.
Yay.
Yay.
Let's see, we have it on our website.
A new class is coming up.
Class,
You.
yes, there's a class starting in July, right, Cleo?
No, actually,
No.
the applications will go up at the end of June. And the deadline for the applications is September. All the details will be up soon. And then classes begin in January. So the commitment is to attend the class once a week. It's a 4-month course. And we are still in the process of figuring out how many classes will be in person, how many will be in Zoom, but it should be an exciting program. We managed to complete the class of 2020 under the COVID restrictions by doing it all, by adapting our program to fit the needs. And now we have quite a few new master gardeners that are actually helping on this project today and all the other projects. So keep your eye out. The applications will be coming out in end of June, and the deadline will be in the last week of September. So we are looking forward to seeing your application.
And the link is in the chat.
The link is in the chat, and it's on our webpage when the application will go live. Thank you.
I just want to encourage you to do it because it's a wonderful group of people and it's really fun.
Yes, it is.
Well, the most important thing is the ability to volunteer for our community to share science-based information when it comes to growing our own food and the information that is coming down from the University of California. So it serves a purpose. And then we are also oftentimes, like with the drought and with the fire, when the community has a need, we have to adapt and redo our programs to provide that information to the public. So it's a complete service to the community if you're interested in serving.
Okay, thank you. This was all the questions that I had that had been pre-submitted. I don't know if anybody got in any late questions that I didn't have a copy of, but if you are sitting here right now thinking about some questions, you've got a couple minutes here to get in some questions. So enter them in the chat. I just want to say, as I hope everybody, tries, some food gardening. It's rewarding. It's like, oh wow, I actually produce something that I usually buy in the grocery store. But and realize that you don't have to have a big plot to do it. You can have a pot, you can have whatever. And so, and like I said, the flavor and everything else is spectacular. And in a lot of cases, whether it's tomatoes, it's not an extensive amount of water. So hopefully, give it a try, use some of these techniques. Um, I'm in Healdsburg, so I'm not allowed to use drip right now because we're in stage 3. But I'll be darned if my tomatoes are going to suffer. I'll skip a few showers, but don't tell my friends. So, in order to get those tomatoes to grow. So, anyway, I don't see any more questions coming in right now. I don't think let me just do one last check. I think, and remember again that, let's see. There was one question, I guess we had 2. Missed a couple minutes earlier. She missed a couple minutes earlier. Okay. Would you recommend using shade cloth during extreme temp?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
We did talk about using a lightweight cloth. Even the benefits might be you're able to collect some dew on the inside of it from the soil evaporation. And so that some of it might fall back on your soil. But yeah, that's a good strategy. Be careful about tucking it in all around the plant on a really hot day, because then you're going to create an even hotter environment for your plant. So you do have to have some air circulation, but over the top is great.
That green, the green shade cloth works really well because it's got pretty big holes in it. So it lets the air through.
Okay. Thank you all. I think that's it for the questions that I see anywhere. So it looks like we'll wrap up today's session. I will mention, as shown on the chart there, we're on veggies here. So veggie happenings are every second Tuesday of the month. And the next one is July the 13th. Also, if we have not had time to answer your question, or as soon as you get off, you think of another question, or a week from now, or as you get more drought, please go to our website and submit your question to our information desk at mgsonoma@ucdavis.edu. All of our upcoming Zoom webinar talks can be found on our website. And if you happen to have a mobile device, you can scan the QR code there and it'll go to a list of our upcoming events. Like I said, the UC Master Gardeners website has so much information and articles on a lot of subjects. So, please explore our website and also visit Master Gardeners on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Just to give you a heads up, just because, like I said, some of us are in different stages of drought. So we are also working with our UC advisors and the city of Healdsburg and others to hopefully offer some drought webinars in the future to provide guidance with this year's severe drought landscape regulations that are going into effect or have gone into effect. So just like I said, be kind of watching for that. Finally, we are a nonprofit volunteer organization. So if you would like to help, please visit our website at sonomamg.ucanr.edu. Cleo, I don't know if you got the last slide there, the last chart. There's, if she gets up, there's a QR code you can also scan on the slide. It'll take you to our webpage. I just want to say thank you so much for attending today's session of Ask a Master Gardener. I know everybody is very concerned with the drought, and with their vegetable gardens, their landscape, everything else. So hopefully we'll get through this summer. And we are looking forward to being able to help you with any of your gardening questions that come up. So please don't, hesitate to contact us. Thanks again. Stop recording.